My general impression of the health on the reef in Waitara, there's clearly patches which are really quite healthy, and we saw that when we're out there, where you've got this bright pink paint and you've got really healthy looking seaweeds. And then you see other parts of the reef where you've got a lot of silt input, and you can see where it's smothered some parts of the reef, and you can see where the pink paint's been bleached and there's not as much seaweed and there's not as much marine life. So yeah, I'd consider it a bit of a patchwork quilt in terms of healthy sections and not. And it's worth saying, through doing this project's really given me a much larger picture. Through the usual surveys that I do, we usually survey one point on one reef, which is Otaraua. But through doing this survey, it's given me a much better picture of what's happening across the different reefs. So, yeah, I think it's a great idea to get the community involved in reef restoration. Then better knowledge of the reef in the first place, better knowledge of Tikanga, then in which case there's a lot of principles behind some the Tikanga which has sound scientific principles. The idea of turning the rocks back over. There's a good reason why certain animals live on the bottom of rocks and certain seaweeds live on the top of rocks, and if you turn them over, you wreck the environment for both. Through following those simple environmental principles, but also getting people down the reef and realising areas of the reef that are healthy, areas of the reef that are not so healthy, and maybe identifying those areas of the reef that might need a health check. It might be that some of the reef areas that are not so healthy, that it's due to natural circumstances, or it might be found that there's actually something that can be done from an environmental management perspective that can reduce the pressures on those areas. When it comes to the Tikanga behind turning the rocks back over, then there's specific niches on different parts of the rock, and what we mean by that is underneath the rock it'll provide a great sheltered environment for certain animals that don't like to be dried out, that are not used to desiccation, so they've got this nice sheltered stable environment underneath. And those little animals, so we've got hydrozoa, we've got bryozoans, we've got hydroids, we've got ascidians, lots of cool little animals and little that are encrusting on there, and other animals feed on those animals, and then you get the whole reef food web that's reliant on those organisms being there. And again, on the top of the rocks, you've got various species of seaweed that need the light. So if you turn them over and wreck that condition, then the organisms under the rock are no longer where they want to be, and the organisms on top of the rocks are no longer where they want to be. So you're wrecking the whole balance of the reef. So there's good sound scientific principles behind why it's really important to turn the rocks back over.
Our tikanga is that you don't shell the seafood on the reef. Can you explain in science how that backs up our tikanga? Why you don't do that?
Yeah, so animals on the reef are generally very sensitive to chemical cues. So if you release those chemical cues, then it will trigger responses that would be outside of the normal behaviour. It may be certain organisms are attracted to it. It may be certain organisms are stressed by it. So it upsets the balance of the reef. Also, yeah, it may be bad to have the rotting flesh there as well. So there's again the environment, the marine environment. Instead of we smell, whereas the animals on the reef sense chemical cues. So yeah, it's very important to their behaviour. This project has been inspirational in terms of putting the communities at the forefront I think the way that citizen science is commonly done is it's driven by the scientists. So the scientists come up with a problem to be solved, and then they work out a way that the general public can help them solve that, and they get them out like little slaves doing the little tasks and collecting the data. This project has been really different in that it's actually driven by the community in the first instance. So the Otaraua Hapu and Waitara Alive were extremely keen to revisit the original survey in 2001 by Tom Hunt and people he collaborated with, and revisit and see how the reef had changed, see how the health of the reef had changed. So I was delighted to be contacted and brought on board, but I was very much brought in as scientific support. But we've very much worked as a team. So the initial idea is community based, and then we've worked as a team with different areas of expertise coming together to tackle the problems together, and we've developed that problem together. So it's not been me coming in and saying, oh, you do it like this. It's been us talking through the issues and what's important and how we can tackle that, and developing the scientific side, but also capturing the cultural values, capturing the local knowledge, and bringing all that together as a big jigsaw piece. And I think that makes a very strong project. I see this very much as a project with different experts. So I don't actually see myself as an expert on the project. So I come with scientific expertise, but everyone's got different, and I'm sure it's come through in the interviews that everybody has different angles of expertise. So it's been great to add the science component, but making sure that science is in fitting with what needs to be answered in terms of the big picture.